settlers coming in to America on land that was not rightfully theirs. The government supporting them in their decision to try to take what land was not theirs and remove the people who inhabited it. Could this really be America? Yes. This is an event known as the Trail of Tears in American history. In the 1800s, many settlers were moving into the southeastern and eastern part of the United States. The British government set up the Proclamation Line of 1763, which said that they could not go west of the Mississippi River. So many settlers were sitting there being pinned between the Mississippi River and the Atlantic Ocean with all that land thinking that it was theirs. But it wasn't. The Native Americans lived there. And during this time, the Native Americans were living on their own, had their own civilized societies, fought, and lived their own lives apart from the settlers. But the settlers were constantly moving into their land. The Trail of Tears is an event that haunts American history, and the actions of Andrew Jackson and the government of this time leave a dark stain on the history of America. So to begin with, Andrew Jackson was a pretty avid supporter of Indian removal. As his time in general, he fought Native Americans very often and forced them off the land. U.S. history said he led countless brutal attacks against the Native American people in Georgia and that area to fight them and kill them. And this continued in his presidency. In the 1830s, he signed the Indian Removal Act. And this basically said that Native Americans had to make a deal with the government to give them their land to be removed. This was pretty widely accepted in America. A lot of settlers wanted the land. There was a gold rush in Britannica said there was a gold rush in 1829 in Georgia that drew tons of people into that land. And then the farmland was also probably the best in the whole country. That land was sought after. The amount of wealth that it could bring for those settlers and the people of America at this time is immense. And Andrew Jackson wanted that land for his people. So he signed the Indian Removal Act in 1830, and it was pretty much over from there. Native Americans tried to fight it. Some tried to use violence, like the Seminole people. In the Seminole War, they fought in the Florida area, tried to keep their land, and it was pretty successful. A lot of the Indians were removed, but others were able to fight off long enough that the government said this is not worth the fight and we will let them keep their land. The Sauk people, led by Black Hawk in the Northeast, fought against the government, or tried to lead a retaliation against the people, and it was failed. They got beat pretty quick, and this was in 1832, Britannica said. And others tried to fight legally. The Cherokee people, most notably, took a case to the Supreme Court. This case was known as the Cherokee People versus Georgia. And Justice John Marshall said that the Cherokee people did have the right to keep their land and the government could not take their land. But Andrew Jackson famously quoted, "Then you go enforce it," to the Supreme Court marshal at this time, and did not enforce the law. So the Cherokee people continually had settlers, the government, Georgia, pushing them out of their lands, condensing them in, so to push them west and take that land from them. So eventually, every single Native American tribe in the east and southeast and northeast were moved off. The government ignored all of the fame. They made deals with every single tribe, paying them a lump sum of cash for that land, and then a brutal journey west. The Choctaw people were the first. History.com said that they were bound in chains, taken across a few thousand-mile journey from southeastern United States to Oklahoma, which was known as the Indian Territory. America had set this land apart during the time for that purpose of giving it to the Native Americans, because it was the land that they did not want. This land was not very fertile, not much farm ability on it, and Americans at this time didn't know what to do with it. So they decided to take the natives' land and move them west. And after the Choctaw people, the Cherokee people followed. They made a deal of I think it was $5 million for the land they lived on, and they were moved west as well. The northeastern tribes were also moved. They accounted for probably 1/3 of the Native Americans moved across west into the Western Territory. And throughout this trip, there were thousands killed on the trip. It was brutal. They were forcefully taken out of their houses and marched, some in chains, through storms, everything, into this Western Territory. And of the Cherokee people, I think some 20,000 were transported, some 5,000 or 10,000 died. And that's just a rough number because they don't know. But that didn't just happen with the Cherokee, that happened with all Native American tribes. Basically, every single one in the eastern United States got removed and taken from their land. Now, this is all to say that this did happen in America, and it did haunt, and it does haunt the past. These people were put through what they should not have been put through, and honestly, it was very wrong to those people to take their land from them and force them into a place that they've never been. Some say that they tried to civilize the Indians. George Washington most famously said that they should try to civilize the Indians and make them like citizens of the United States, but it never worked. So they ended up taking it. Andrew Jackson was basically the strongest influence on this. He blatantly ignored the Supreme Court decision, forced the armies onto the people and forced them off their land. This event in history is very dark. It stains America's today even. And to close off, what events now are similar to the Trail of Tears, and is there anything that has had this magnitude of effect on Native Americans? Thank you. How close was that?